In 2008, in the small coastal town of Meningerie, Madagascar, something happened that locals still refuse to talk about. It began when a group of 6 eco-tourists came to study rare planets near the rainforest. They were curious and respectful, not the kind of tourists who laughed at the traditions or snapped pictures without asking. They wanted to learn. Among them was a young man named Eric from Sweden. He was studying botany and had read about the sacred plants used in Malagasy healing rituals. He was especially interested in rare herbs used by traditional healers during exorcism. Their guide was a middle-aged man named Kato, quiet and lean, with sun-scorched skin and cloudy eyes that always seems to be watching the trees. He offered to take them into a forest to meet a local healer who still practiced the old ways. They accepted. Deep in the jungle, after hours of walking, they reached a small village surrounded by thick vines and silence. The air felt heavy. The healer was a woman named Wahirana. She lived in a hut with dozens of strange symbols drawn on the walls in white chalk. Wahirana spoke slowly, in riddles. She told them the forest has ears. If you take what it owns, it will follow you. They assumed she was being poetic. She agreed to show them the herb, but only if they joined the ritual of protection first. She said the forest spirit would become angry otherwise. The group hesitated, but Eric agreed quickly, eager to witness something rare. One by one, the others joined in. The ritual began at sundown. Wahirana drew symbols on their foreheads with white clay. A fire was lit in a ring of stones and smoke rose high into the treetops. She chanted softly in a language none of them understood. Then she passed around a wooden bowl filled with a bitter black liquid. This will open the path between you and forest, she said. Do not resist it. Eric drank first. The others followed. Within minutes, things changed. The trees around them started to bend, though there was no wind. The firelight flickered in strange patterns, and Eric began to laugh. Not a normal laugh. It was loud, sharp, almost cruel. He dropped to his knees and screamed. Wahirana shouted in Malagasy. The villagers grabbed him, but he threw them off with unnatural strength. Eric's face changed. His eyes rolled back. He scratched his own skin, mumbling something in a voice that didn't sound like his. He looked up at Wahirana and hissed, "You cannot bind me." Everyone froze. Then Eric ran into the forest. They searched for hours, but the jungle at night is a difficult world. Everything looked the same. The sounds twists, time stretched. By morning, there was no sign of him. The group wanted to go to the police, but Wahirana warned them. If he's taken, no man can find him. Leave now, don't wait. But they didn't. They waited one more night, and that was a mistake. That evening, one of the tourists, Lena, was found dead. Her body was bent backward, arms broken, her mouth wide open like she had died screaming. But there were no signs of struggle, no footprints, nothing stolen, just her body in middle of their camp. Wahirana came to them in the morning. Her face was grim. "You should have left," she said. "Now he's one of them." They asked what she meant. She told them a story. Years ago, a man entered the forest and took sacred herbs for his own use without permission. He was warned. He didn't listen. Days later, he returned possessed. But it wasn't a demon. she said. It was a wandering spirit that needed a body, and now it had Eric. The group panicked. They packed their things, but as they prepared to leave, one of them screamed. Eric was standing across the river. His clothes were torn, his skin scratched, but he was smiling, not with joy. It was a smile stretched too wide, too calm. His eyes were dead. Then he vanished into the trees. The group ran, but one by one they were picked off. Jacob was found hanging from a tree, with symbols carved into his chest. Marie disappeared while going to the bathroom. Only her necklace was found covered in mud. Sophia tried to run back to the village. She made it halfway before her throat was cut silently. By the end of the week, only one person remained, a British woman named Helen. She managed to escape. She wandered through the jungle for days, barefoot, starving, hallucinating. She was found by a fisherman who took her to a hospital. Helen told the authorities everything. But when they returned to the forest, there was no village, no Wahirana, no huts, no symbols, nothing. Just untouched jungle, and Eric never found. By a year later, in a different region of Madagascar, another group of travelers disappeared. They were last seen entering the forest with a man described as tall, light hair, and very quiet with pale green eyes, just like Eric. Some say he's still out there, not as himself, but as a vessel, a carrier for something that uses him to draw others in. And every now and then a new traveler goes missing near Menagerie. Locals always say the same thing. The forest doesn't forget. It was supposed to be an adventure. Just 5 friends from Netherlands, all in their late 20s, curious about the world and its hidden places. They weren't the usual tourists. They wanted something real, raw, strange. That's why they picked Madagascar. Not the beaches, not the resorts, but the Ankaratra mountains. Ankaratra wasn't in the guidebooks. It was said to be a cursed land in some places, where the old tribes used to bury their sorcerers, their angry dead. The group found a local guide named Dama, who was quiet and didn't make eye contact. When they told him they wanted to explore the inner forests, he didn't answer at first. He just looked at them, like he was trying to guess if they were joking or suicidal. But Dama needed the money, so he agreed. The forest was thick, breathing. Moss covered the trees like skin. Everything was quiet, no birds, no wind, no bugs, just silence. It was almost like the air itself was watching. They hiked deep, too deep. Dama warned them not to go past the river. He said, the trees beyond the tree speak names. If it calls yours, don't answer. They laughed at him, thinking it was a local folklore, just campfire talk. But Dama's face was pale. They crossed the river anyway. That night they set up camp. It was unusually cold. William, the most skeptical of the group, joked that the forest was just dramatic. But sometimes around midnight, Elske woke up screaming. She said something whispered her name right into her ear. She was sure of it, not like a dream, real. The others told her it was wind, nerves. But Dama didn't say anything. He just packed his bag. He said, I warn you, if it called one, It will call more. He left before sunrise. By the second night, things got worse. They heard footsteps circling their necks, but saw nothing. Jasper, the loud one of the group, claimed he saw someone standing in the trees, just far enough that you couldn't see the face. It was tall and looked like one of them, like a reflection. They wanted to leave, but they couldn't figure out the way back. The GPS stopped working. The trail had vanished, like forest had swallowed it. Then came the names. It started with soft whispers during the day while walking. You'd hear your name gently, like someone you loved was calling from behind the tree. William, Elske, Jasper. At first they ignored it, but Jasper answered once. He just said, yes, and turned toward the voice. Nothing was there. That night he went missing. They found his boots near the river, but not Jasper. No blood, no drag marks, just his boots, pointed toward the woods. William wanted to search. Elske said no, the forest didn't want them to find anything. That night, Elske sat up suddenly. She pointed into the trees. There, she said. Do you see him? That's Jasper. There was nothing. But then they heard him, his voice clear as day, saying, Guys, help me, I'm lost. William called back, Where are you? No answer. They heard him again, but this time closer. Guys, I'm cold. I don't remember how I got here. Lieke, the quietest of the group, began crying. She said it wasn't Jasper. It sounded like him, but something was wrong. The voice had no emotion, like it was reading a script. Elske turned to William. Don't follow it. It's not him. But William had already walked off into the trees. The next morning, he was gone. Only Lieke and Elske remained. They tried to leave, pick a direction, any direction, but the forest twisted. Trees they passed were suddenly behind them again. Elske carved an X into a trunk. 10 minutes later, the same X showed up in front of them. The forest was folding around them. They stopped talking, they stopped eating. Then Elske heard Lieke talking to herself at night, whispering back, saying her own name again and again. Lieke, Lieke. Elske tried to stop her, but Lieke bit her arm. She had never seen that look in her friend's eyes before, wild, gone, like something else was inside. By morning, Lieke was missing. Only Elske remained. She wrote the story down in her notebook, every detail, every voice, every name. Then she tied it around a rock and threw it across the river, hoping someone would find it. She didn't. Local search teams later found a notebook and one boot, black European, mud-covered near the riverbank. They never found the tourists, no bodies, no gear. But once, a ranger who didn't believe the stories went hiking through the part of Ankaratra alone. He wore a camera. He never came back. When the authorities recovered his footage, the last 30 seconds were cropped, except for the sound. A voice, not his. It whispered just one thing over and over. Elske, Elske. It happened in 2017. A group of 6 travelers from different countries signed up for an off-the-map boat tour in Madagascar. The tour promised an authentic spiritual experience along the Pangalans Canal, a series of man-made natural waterways that stretch hundreds of kilometers along the eastern coast. The guide, a man named Raharisan, wasn't licensed tour operator. He didn't have a website or a sign, just word of mouth, passed between backpackers in hustle and dusty travel forums. His speech was always the same. See the canal that locals fear. Learn what they don't tell tourists. The travelers were curious types. Two French sisters, a Brazilian medical student, a South African couple, and an American man named David, who was a travel blogger. They didn't know each other before that day. They met in a small village where Harrison told them the boat would leave at dawn. From the beginning, something felt off. The boat was old, made of wood that creaked every time it moved. The engine sputtered and coughed like it was dying. But Harrison smiled and said, "This boat knows the way better than any map." The canal was quiet, too quiet. Thick trees arched over the water like a tunnel, and a strange bird sat perfectly still in the branches, watching. The water wasn't clear, but thick and green, hiding whatever lived underneath. After an hour, they passed a small floating shrine, just sticks tied together with red cloths and bones hanging from them like a wind chimes. The boat slowed. Harrison removed his hat and muttered something in Malagasy. David asked what it meant. Harrison just said, "We asked the colonel to let us pass." No one laughed. They arrived at a small village by the water's edge. The locals looked nervous when the group arrived. Old women turned their backs. Children were pulled inside. A man with white eyes muttered something when he saw David, then walked into the forest without another word. That night Harrison invited them to watch a lakeside ceremony. He said it was sacred and very rare for others to witness. It was meant to bind the angry waters. The ritual was held under the moonlight. Locals danced in a circle while one woman covered in a white clay stood completely still and stared into the darkness. Then she screamed, high and sharp, and fell to the ground. Everyone else stayed quiet. The fire crackled. The woman began to speak, but her voice didn't sound human. It was low and shaking, like it was coming from somewhere deep inside her. She pointed at the group, at David. Everyone froze. Harrison's face turned pale. He whispered, "She say you've seen the wrong thing." That night David couldn't sleep. He thought he saw something in water, something white like a face, just beneath the surface. He turned on his camera and filmed it, but when he checked the footage the next morning, it was all black. The camera still worked, but the file was just darkness and a faint sound like someone breathing underwater. The Brazilian girl said she heard someone outside her window calling her name in the middle of the night. She thought it was a dream, but her door had been unlatched in the morning. The group wanted to leave. Harrison said it was dangerous to leave before the second ceremony. He said the water spirits might follow them back. But they insist. He reluctantly agreed. The boat ride back started quiet, too quiet. Then David pointed to the trees. "Do you see that?" he asked. A woman in white was standing in the reeds. Her face was grey and her eyes were completely black. She didn't move, just watched them as they floated past. Harrison refused to turn the boat around. "You must not look back," he said, gripping the engine. "If you look back, she follows." But one of the French sisters did. and that's when the boat engine died, just like that. The boat began to drift. The canal was calm, but there was a low humming sound coming from somewhere. The air felt heavy. The Brazilian girl started crying. She said she could hear someone whispering her name from under the boat. Then the water bubbled. Not like a fish, like something large was moving below them. David reached for his camera, but his hand froze. He couldn't move. He was staring at something in the water. Something none of the others could see. Then he whispered, "I think I understand now," and he jumped into the canal. They screamed. The South African man tried to reach for him, but he was already gone. The water was calm again, like nothing had happened. Harrison started chanting, loud, fast, panicked. One of the sisters passed out. The other one vomited and began clawing at her arms. The Brazilian girl stood up and shouted, "We need to swim, now!" But the water had turned black, not dirty, black, like it wasn't water anymore. Harrison shouted, "Do not touch the water, it belongs to them now." The Brazilian girl jumped anyway. She made it to the edge and ran into the forest. They never saw her again. The boat drifted for hours. When the authorities finally found it 2 days later, there was no one aboard. No bodies, no gear, no sign of a struggle, just a small wooden carving of a woman with black eyes left on one of the seats. David was never found. Neither were the others, except for the Brazilian girl. She was discovered weeks later in another village, barefoot and covered in scratches. She refused to speak for months. When she finally did, she just said one thing. He didn't drown. He walked into the water like it was calling him home. To this day, no one knows what had happened on that canal, but locals don't fish in that part anymore. They say the water is cursed because once long ago, criminals were thrown into it as a punishment, and their angry souls still live in the mud. And sometimes, just sometimes, if you sail through that stretch of water at night, you'll hear your name being whispered by voices that no longer belong to living.